To the 20th episode of the Open One podcast, and I'm very happy to have Paul Burgess join me today. And we're going to get into the climate con narrative and just completely dismantle it, take it apart piece by piece, get into stuff like wind turbines, the sea level rising, or is it actually rising, and why we actually want more CO2. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so, would you like to just give a bit of introduction on yourself and why you got into this work and how it's been for you?
Okay, well, I'm an old man. I'm 77 now. So way back in 1970 and 71, I was water resource engineer for Cornwall, and the job was planning water resources. Actually, in the end, for the whole of the southwest, that's Somerset, Cornwall, and Devon, with working groups and things. And so my job was to develop systems to do that. And in doing that, I analysed 100 years of river data we had, of river flows. Now, they're rain-fed rivers, so all the water comes from the atmosphere, no springs and things. So I analysed it, and in doing that, I built a mathematical model, and the mathematical model had a very clear, distinct 11-year cycle within it, and that was the sunspot cycle. So lo and behold, I'd related river flows to the sunspot cycle, and quite strongly, quite a clear signal. And that meant that I was relating the rainfall to the sunspot cycle, and in effect relating the cloud cover to the sunspot cycle. So the more cloud cover there is, the less radiation reaches Earth, and the cooler it is. And so, in effect, I realized the significance of the sun very, very early on. And so that sparked my interest way back then. I mean, that's what, over 50 years ago. So over 50 years ago. So that's what started it all. And I've always had an interest ever since I was a kid. When I was 11, I was even contributing some pocket money, and I come from a very poor background. I think in one 3-bedroom terraced house, I think 4 or 5 families, really poor. And so I was giving my pocket money, what I got when I was 11, to the Anglo Cooperative Association, which was fighting pollution in rivers. That's all it did. It was a legal fund to stop polluters. And I've always been interested in the environment. And of course, these days, people tend to mix up pollution with climate change. Right? They're very distinct. So I'm a very big environmentalist. I'm very big anti-polluter. And I'm very much against the current climate change agenda. So that's what started it. And then as I went through my careers, I ended up still in the 70s, actually, in fact, in 74, I think it was, in charge of the whole of Wales for water resources. And again, I found myself disrupting things. So I sat on basically what would be today Department of the Environment National Committee for the whole of the UK, and ended up, well, I met government really there for the first time, and how inadequate it is. They were planning a system, a computer system, and I'd already was heavily into computing then, and the mathematical modeling, etc. And I couldn't take the snail pace they were going at. So they actually said they were going to develop a national system, and these water resources. And they then employed Logica, who they paid £25,000 to see if it's feasible. Well, within 10 weeks of that, we developed the system and completed it back in Wales. And it cost us about 10,000 quid, our total costs. And so that's less than the feasibility study, 40% of the feasibility study. And the feasibility study reported back, and when it did, it reported back it would take 2 years and it cost £250,000. Well, it was all dead in the water because we'd done it. And so the whole industry came to Wales. And so that was my first bit of disruption. I ended up actually leaving the water industry and going into my own business, and became a disruptor there by inventing product after product, which changed some of the things, to today. And even today, I sold that company, but my product is now voted the best in its type in America, for example. So I've always been a disruptor. I didn't realize until recently I was. But it's just that there is so much rubbish being spoken, above all, so much miseducation to children, that I just had to interfere. So I now do videos explaining how wrong what's going on is, and challenging people. I mean, we don't even have proper science today, because If I'm wrong on any of my videos, if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, I'm more than happy to learn. I'd rather be put right than be wrong. And science is about that. Science is about. And in my latest video, I've just published one of the rules of the IPCC, which is if anything comes up, basically, that's against the consensus, then it has to be put away, not to get in the way of the main message. And that's done by politicians. And in fact, the report to all the governments is done by politicians and not scientists. They'll even go against their own scientists. So, and the idea of consensus in science doesn't exist. But I'm accused, I'm accused of all sorts of things. And but what they never seem to do is actually argue with the points I make logically or the points I make scientifically. So that's what I do. And that's where I am.
It's really great work you're doing, and I believe it will continue to be quite powerful. When in the future, a lot of people will be referencing your material as like, hey, look, this is a very good source of information.
Don't forget it. In a way, it's just me exposing other people's work in a way, because all I do is try to take all the gobbledygook out of it, but give you the scientific facts, and give you the evidence for that. Even down to not just to the pure science, as it were, which is totally corrupted, but also down to the practical things. I mean, if you take wind power, I've done a recent video on that called "When the Wind Stops," episode 8. It's a whole series called "When the Wind Stops," and I was actually water resource engineer for Norwich in North Wales, which was the pump storage scheme. And that's biggest in Europe at the time, and it stored 9.1 gigawatt hours and released it at a rate of 1.74 gigawatts, I think. And they're planning a big pump storage scheme now in Scotland called the Curry one, which is 30 gigawatt hours, which so total together you could look almost 40 gigawatt hours. But we had 9 days without wind in 2018. So as the wind drops, you've got to make that up. And you'd need 5,500 gigawatt hours. And we'd have, even if we built this big one, we'd have 40. We couldn't even run the UK for 1 minute, not 1 second, with our reserve power without gas. And the funny thing there, my take-home message is, believe it or not, look what the government have done. They've closed down nuclear a lot. I mean, we're heading down to 2 gigawatts now. We've got about 4 roughly now, but we're heading to 2. What they've done is replace it with fossil fuel. So they've taken a non-fossil fuel source and replace it with gas, because that was the only thing that can quickly balance the wind. You can't have coal or nuclear balancing the wind, but they've actually gone into the baseload part, trying to make wind work with that, which is extremely costly. And I was on LBC, I've been on there lots of times, over 100, I think. And but in recent last few years, I haven't, because of the attitude of some of the presenters. I couldn't take it. And following me was Ed Miliband claiming that renewables are 9 times cheaper. That's a lie. That's just not true. We paid, well, you'll see later in my talk, what we did. So I get involved with the practical engineering aspects as well.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that. And I really look forward to what you've got prepared for us. Cheers for taking the time.
Okay, well, shall we start now? And I'll show you the first slide.
Sounds good.